days when there was no king. Every man did what was right in his own eyes, but God raised up deliverers.
Hello, and welcome back to Teaching Through the Bible, as we wrap up the book of Judges today. Hello, and welcome back to Teaching Through the Bible, as we wrap up the book of Judges today. Now, you might just say, wait a second, did I just hear that same thing twice? Yeah, you had an echo, right? A repeat. You heard one thing, you saw one thing, and then the same thing happened again. Now, in this narrative, we see something like that. In this narrative, we have been talking about how we've got the tribe of Benjamin. They have a town named Gibeah. It's doing the same thing that we saw with Sodom and Gomorrah in the book of Genesis. And they're doing the same evil stuff. And so now, what's going to happen? The man whose wife got totally violated, he actually cuts her up, sends pieces of her out to all the tribes, which is gruesome. But it's not the only time that happens, as far as using something like that to bring the tribes together. We'll see that again in something not quite the same, but similar in the book of Samuel coming up soon. But brings them all together, all of Israel, and the man says, hey, here's this evil thing that happened in Gibeah. And what are they going to do? It says, this is the people who come from Dan to Beersheba, including Gilead. Well, that means everybody. Because you have, here's your map, right? And when it says Dan to Beersheba, Dan is up here. Beersheba's down here. Gilead is over here. So it's like, hey, all of this area and that, including that. So this is all of Israel is coming to address this. And what do they decide to do? They're going to wipe out Benjamin, because the whole tribe of Benjamin is being evil here. It was the one town, but when the tribe of Benjamin gets confronted by the rest of Israel about that, and Israel says, here's the problem, Benjamin says, no, we're going to go to bat for them. We're on their side. Because to them, ethnicity is more important than spirituality. To them, hey, that's our blood relatives. So we're going to back them up regardless of what they did, even though what they're doing is evil. And so they become accomplices with Benjamin's side on one side, and then the rest of Israel on the other. And now this wiping out of this whole tribe seems like maybe kind of crazy, kind of extreme, but in reality, what's happening is actually, you could say, biblical. It's what God would have them do, because, as we talked about last time, Benjamin has become the Canaanites. And so they are to be treated as the Canaanites. And we see in this section, we have a repeat in a number of ways, because they go, all the tribe of Israel, they go in chapter 20, verse 18, people of Israel arose and went up to Bethel and inquired of God. So they're actually going to God about this, which is great, because that doesn't happen a lot. Who shall go up first for us to fight against the people of Benjamin? And Yahweh said, Judah shall go up first. Now, if that sounds familiar, it should, because way back at the beginning of Judges, if we flip back to the very first verses of Judges, so chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, then what do we see there? After the death of Joshua, the people of Israel inquired of Yahweh, who shall go up first for us against the Canaanites to fight against them? And Yahweh said, Judah shall go up. So we're having the same thing happen. just as they went against the Canaanites, they are to go against Benjamin, because Benjamin is the Canaanites spiritually at this point. They have put themselves in that camp. Because, as I've said a number of times before, God's not concerned about the ethnicity. It's the spiritual situation that these people are in. It's the evil that's there, regardless of if they're biologically Israelites or not. Just like Rahab, who was a Canaanite, can join God's people because it's not about ethnicity, because she is accepting Yahweh as her God, so she can join that group. Benjamin, when they all say, no, we're going to do all the evil things and we're going to reject God, they can be treated as Canaanites. So that's what happens. And then you have a situation kind of similar to what we saw earlier in the book of Joshua, against Ai, that smaller town, where they went and they fought, and they lost, and then you kind of have several cycles of battle until God says, hey, do it this way, and they win. And so finally, after losses, Israel defeats the smaller tribe of Benjamin. And when they do that, they defeat Benjamin, they wipe out almost all of Benjamin, and so Israel's been doing actually the right thing up to this point. But then, you just can't have a good thing with Israel. They're finally doing the right thing, and then they veer off because they don't totally destroy Benjamin. And the situation that they end up creating does actually end up probably being where the line of Saul comes from, King Saul, that we'll learn about pretty soon, a few videos from now. But they feel bad. They say, they're our brothers. They're part of the tribes of Israel. We don't really want them. We don't want to try to be totally wiped out, which is a reasonable thing to, in a sense, to feel anguish over. That, like, man, it really sucks that this whole tribe is being wiped out. It's they were part of us, and they're all being wiped out. Like, that's reasonable to have those feelings, but feelings don't dictate what's right or wrong. And God has said to wipe them out. They are Canaanites now, in essence. And just like the Canaanites, they were supposed to wipe all them out, and they didn't do that. Well, they're supposed to wipe all Benjamin out, and they don't do that. So they're just another repeat. And so then at the end of the day, Israel decides ethnicity is more important than spiritual. So just like Benjamin did that initially, now they're doing that. They're all going against what God says. They're doing what's right in their own eyes, not what's right in God's. And that's a phrase, again, that has been said a number of times in the book of Judges. They're all doing what's right in their own eyes. And they get out of their situation by basically going around it with a technicality. Because they say, there's only a few of them left, Benjaminites, and they need to be able to repopulate. They need to have wives, to be able to have kids and grow their tribe back. And then through that technicality, they say, this one group of us didn't come. No one from Jabesh Gilead came to join us in the fight against Benjamin. So now we're going to punish them for it. Which, maybe you could argue, it was bad for them to not come. Maybe they should have come, and they did deserve some kind of repercussion. You could make that argument, but even if you succeed in making that argument, that doesn't mean that then the result should be take their women and give them to Benjamin, because Benjamin should be wiped out. So if you're determined to do the right thing, and if the right thing is to have some consequence for this town, for this area, then that consequence can't be to give some of the women to the people who are all supposed to be dead already. So So you've got them kind of trying to find this little loophole to be like, well, we said we weren't gonna, be involved in this, or we weren't gonna, give any of our women to them, and they were gonna be destroyed. Well, so we can't do that. But those guys over there, they didn't come, so technically they're not part of that agreement. So technically we can get their women to be wives for them, and then that'll also let us kind of like, give a consequence to them for not showing up, and so that'll all really work out. That's kind of their plan here. Again, what's right in their own eyes, not what actually makes sense, not what is actually a godly thing to do, but what is right in their own eyes. And that is how Judges ends. It ends with this terrible ending. And so that's what we're seeing in the outline: unfaithful Israel, faithful Judges, unfaithful Israel. We have seen a lot of how Yahweh is faithful to save his unfaithful people. We've seen a lot of the fact that while we have them doing evil, their enemies defeating them crying out, God sending judges who get rejected. We've seen those judges. We've seen that they represent Jesus, that they are these faithful leaders that God sends to save his people. And yet God's people, and really we're just like them, continue to reject. They don't accept God. They don't accept his leaders. And it's just like people in the world today, how we just reject God, how we need that great Savior, but we need someone even better than those judges, because as great as they were only, when they died, everyone was going through the cycle again. And so here we end with one of the narratives that really kind of is showing the evil, showing what caused the need for the judges, that showed that they had a problem. We don't see a judge here. This is kind of this is chronologically earlier, that shows what happened, what kind of the evil was that then precipitated the rest of the cycle. But it ends with this, even though this is chronologically earlier, kind of showing us, leaving us on that note that this is the state of Israel. This is the state of God's people. This is how evil they are. This is the mess that they are in. This is the hole they've dug for themselves. And it ends, the very last verse, saying, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Book closed, end of story. At least for Judges. And so that's kind of, everyone did what was right in their own eyes. That's the summary of God's people. They're doing what's right in their eyes instead of what's right in God's eyes. Instead of following what the judges said, they're rejecting God, rejecting his leaders. And they see that there's no king. Now, of course, truly there is a king. That's Yahweh. And it's amazing that he continues to be faithful to his unfaithful people because of how crazy unfaithful they are. And for us too, like, we are not faithful on our own. We need someone who's a faithful leader, and that's Jesus. We need someone who's faithful enough for us. And while Israel didn't recognize God as their king, they did know there was the gap. They did see that something's missing here. And they haven't filled it with Jesus. They haven't filled it with God being their king. But we will get to see, as we move on, starting in our next video in the book of Samuel, how they do try to address that situation and what that looks like for them, for Israel, for that nation, moving forward past the era of the judges. And we'll look more at that next time in the book of Samuel. Thank you for watching that video. I hope that it helped you learn a little bit more about the Bible today. And if you'd like to continue to learn more about the Bible, then we have plenty of other videos on the channel. And if this has been helpful for you, then you can always let me know by subscribing to the channel. And hopefully I'll be able to continue to help you learn even more about God's Word. Thanks.